I'm going to show you how to master any language with a simple system that takes all the guesswork out of learning. I've been learning languages for 25 years. I've helped thousands of students get fluent. I've sold millions of language learning books, and I've noticed a huge difference between language students who actually become fluent and the ones who give up. And the problem usually is not motivation, because if you're watching this, chances are you really do want to learn. The real problem is simply not knowing exactly what to do each day to learn a language. And so in this video, I'm going to walk you through my exact step-by-step system that you can follow daily, and it doesn't matter what language you're learning, what level you're starting from, or how little time you might have right now. This routine adapts to all of it. But first, let me show you the mistake that kept me stuck for 2 whole years in my learning, and it was when I was learning Japanese. I made the same mistake that most people make. I studied like crazy. Grammar books, vocab lists, flashcards, anything that looked or felt like serious learning. There's hours of it. I was studying every night after work. But the moment I tried to understand a real conversation between Japanese people, everything collapsed. I couldn't really follow what was being said. And even worse, when someone spoke to me, I'd kind of panic because I couldn't get the words out properly either. You might recognize this feeling. So conversations became just kind of stressful, and I ended up wasting 2 whole years not knowing how to break out of this. Because here's the thing that textbooks often get wrong. Your brain cannot just learn a language through rules and made up practice sentences like these. What actually teaches your brain a language is exposure. That means hearing words again and again and again inside natural sentences that real native speakers actually use, together with emotions and all that good stuff. Think about how you learned English or your mother tongue as a baby and a toddler. I bet you used to say cute things like, I runned fast and I ate all the sweets. But nobody ever sat you down and explained verb conjugations, did they? You just heard hundreds of conversations around you until one day it all clicked. I ran fast, I ate the sweets. And you know the really embarrassing part about my Japanese? Well, I was living in Japan at the time, and I'll tell you later how I finally got it right, but one thing became pretty obvious. Your brain needs to actually interact with the language. The only question is, how do you actually do that? Well, I'm going to show you the exact system that I use, but just a quick heads up, you're probably not going to remember all the steps I'm about to tell you just from watching the video. What you really need is a clear plan that you can follow straight away. So I've put this whole system into a little 3-page guide for you. You can download it for free. It lays out everything step by step, what to focus on first, how to move through each phase, and how to turn it all into real speaking so that you're not second guessing yourself and you always know what to do next. This little guide is completely free. You can scan the QR code on the screen, or you can click the link below, stick it up somewhere on your wall, and it will make this all super easy. So where do you actually start? It's probably going to feel a bit too easy at first, but your very first job is just to get the language into your ears. In other words, hear people speaking the language over and over. That's it. And I know this catches people off guard a bit because it doesn't really feel like learning. You're not trying to understand much in this phase. You're not studying grammar or memorizing anything. You're just immersing. You're getting the language in. Believe it or not, most people don't actually spend much time listening to the language they're learning. They're just heads down in their textbooks all the time. This can feel a bit backwards at first for that reason, but think about this for a second. How does a song get stuck in your head? Did you sit down and study that song with a highlighter? No, you just heard it plenty of times on the radio, and now it lives in your head rent-free, lyrics and all. That's your amazing brain showing you just how quickly it's capable of picking something up, and this extends to language learning too. Now, fair warning, at first, when you're just unfiltered listening, it is going to sound like a lot of gibberish, a fast blur of words flying past your head, but relax. That's exactly how it's supposed to feel. This is not you failing. In fact, your brain is secretly drawing a sound map. It's figuring out the rhythm, the pauses, the groove of the language, and where one word ends and the next begins is happening all there in the background. Unfortunately, here's where people usually start doubting the process, because none of this feels like it's working. There's nothing to drill, there's nothing on a blackboard somewhere, nothing to tick off, no words that you can proudly count. And so it's tempting to skip ahead to the real work and use your valuable attention to do proper study. But this is the real work. You just can't see it happening. So what does this actually look like in real life? Well, at the very beginning, your only job, what I want you to do is just to listen. Find yourself a short 5-minute audio track that's written for learners. So it could be from your textbook. It's something simple, like a little story or dialogue with characters, a simple plot. Find the recording, press play, sit back, and let it just wash over you. Now, our language courses here at Story Learning are built for exactly this, because our courses are designed all around very, very short bite-sized stories for learners, but any well-graded beginner content or textbook will work. The important bit is, while you're listening, don't try to translate in your head, don't look up any words, simply stick with the exact same track for a few days in a row, listen over and over again. You won't understand much at first, but that's fine. As soon as your ears get used to it, well, now you can add something else in. You can listen to the track and then read the text at the same time, right? So story in front of you, audio in your ears, two senses ganging up on the problem at once. Because when you're actually seeing everything spelled out, just watch how fast your brain gets to work, naturally separating the words from the noise. Suddenly now what you hear is actually on the page, so you can start to make sense of what's going on. We want to aim for something called comprehensible input, and this is where you can understand about 80% of what's happening. And if you get that feeling of, hang on, I almost understood that, you know that feeling? That's the sweet spot where your brain does its best work. Now, as a beginner, you're going to be using your beginner course or your beginner textbook. It's slow, it's snail's pace, but that doesn't last very long, that phase. If you're using good material, quite quickly, you can start to understand very simple texts. And as you keep going, you can start adding harder material into the mix. Fun stuff like story-driven podcasts, for example. I love those things. It's where a host talks about interesting topics like travel, true crime, or whatever in natural, clear language, slow enough that you can follow. Just make sure it's not too difficult for you and make sure it's a topic that you are genuinely interested in. My rule of thumb is, if you listen to it in English, then it's going to work for you in your target language. One of my personal favorite things to do right now is to listen to a Japanese podcast where there's two people chatting, just having a regular daily conversation, unstructured, on whatever it is that they want to talk about. I just make sure that I pick podcasts where I can already follow along with the gist of the conversation, right? If you're completely lost, it's too hard for you. You want to be able to understand a good deal of what's happening. And then if you do this, your brain is sneakily downloading the exact phrasing and sentence structure that native speakers use long before you actually need to use it yourself. It's all happening in the background, just like that song that you can't get out of your head. And then eventually, all the graded stuff, meaning the stuff that's written for language learners, will stop challenging you so much, and that's your signal. That's where we take off the training wheels, and then you move into immersing yourself in exactly what native speakers would listen to, like the news, regular podcasts, documentaries, whatever. Basically people talking at full speed with zero interest in slowing down for the likes of you or me. I love the French podcast Legend for this. People share some pretty gripping true stories, and you'll still miss things, of course, I do, but at this level you're listening to build that raw instinct and start feeling what sounds right in the language. Whichever level you're on today, the golden rule doesn't change. You want to pick one thing and stick with it, not 17 podcasts, one. Because the longer you stay with something, the more the language starts getting into your bones. But there's a catch. Everything you've just worked on is wasted if you skip what comes next. All right, so now you've been immersing in the language. Brilliant, well done, you are underway. But here's where the temptation really gets huge. You think to yourself, right now is the time to crack open a textbook and do some real studying, but please don't do that. See, your brain actually hates memorizing dry rules, but what it's secretly brilliant at is spotting patterns. And earlier, while you were listening, your brain was already tracking which sounds belong together. So this phase, this learning phase, is not about cramming anything new. It's about going back to what you heard earlier and actually paying attention this time. Think of yourself as Sherlock Holmes for a minute. I'd probably had a whiskey in there somewhere, but that's just me. You're following the language clues while they're still fresh, listening and going, okay, that's the thing they said earlier. And that right there, when you spot a pattern in a sentence, is the exact moment that all these funny sounds that you never understood before start gradually becoming a language. So at the very beginning of this phase, your move is simple. Take that same story you listened to earlier, and this time actively read it. You're reading and listening together. It's a bit of a magic trick. Your brain builds understanding from two directions at once. And if it's a language with a lot of cognates, which are words that look exactly the same in English, then you get this exciting little moment when you realize that you can understand something. And as you go, you will notice 3 or 4 harder words that keep popping up and nagging at you because they're blocking your understanding. And when that happens, then you can look up those words in the dictionary. We don't want to go down a rabbit hole trying to decode everything, looking up every single word you don't know. Just look up the key words that are blocking what you're reading and listening to. And then when you write them down, if you decide to put them in your notebook, this really matters. Write the whole sentence in which you found those words, not just the single word itself. A word on its own just floats away. There's nothing to anchor to it. But that word inside a real sentence, well, now your brain has something to hold on to. Say you see the French word attends, which means wait or waits. You see that word and you want to remember it. Now, that word on its own, your brain really has nothing to latch onto. It's just two random sounds, right? Attends, how are you going to remember that? But now picture the word in a sentence. Il attend le bus sous la pluie. He's waiting for the bus in the rain, a bit like Totoro, if you get that Japanese reference. Now suddenly you have a little scene accompanying that word. There's a guy waiting for a bus in the rain. Attends, making that connection. So you will write down the whole sentence, the whole thing, because now it's not just a bare word. There's a man, a grey sky, a wet street, and that's what your brain can remember. And if you fancy it, try shadowing a couple of lines. Just mumble along with the audio, copy the sounds. You're not trying to speak yet, you're not impressing anybody, you're just training your mouth muscles to make these shapes before you actually need them. It's a bit like learning to surf on dry land, which I've never tried, but it looks fun. Then one day soon, if you keep doing this regularly, you won't find yourself hunting for the meaning of basic words all the time anymore. You'll start looking for bigger clues, patterns. And if you're worried about grammar here, well, pay attention. Let's say, for example, you are listening and reading along to one of my Italian stories and you come across the sentence, se sei a dieta, non ti voglio tentare. If you are on a diet, then I don't want to tempt you. Now, before, you probably would have just noticed these two cognates, right? Diet and tempt. But now, instead of just letting that sentence cruise past you, you stop and ask, hang on, why is it tentare here and not tento? And why does that little word ti come before the verb instead of after it? You didn't read that rule in a textbook, you just noticed it yourself in a real story. This is grammar discovery, not grammar study. And honestly, when you stumble into a rule like that all by yourself, you actually remember it. And once spotting those patterns stops taking any effort, congratulations. This is where it gets really good, because now when you go back to that podcast from earlier, you aren't hunting for basic grammar anymore, you're hunting for surprises, subtle little Easter eggs that maybe you missed the first time, a weird cultural saying, an interviewer being sarcastic, or how someone changes their politeness when they talk to their boss. In other words, you're starting to hear the stuff hiding underneath the words.
Ay, qué tierno, es un perro. No, fíjate que es un tiburón que saqué del mar.
These hidden bits are gold. You don't want to let them escape. This is what makes knowledge of a language really satisfying as you build it. Try and keep a running list of these things that you like. Write them down and build that native level instinct. So far, everything you've done is still stuck inside your head. And if you've ever intended to actually speak the language you're learning, well, you can see where I'm going with this. So let's get it out. Everything you've poured in, the listening, the noticing, it's all just sitting there locked up. So how do you set it free? What's the obvious next step? Well, we're going to turn everything that you've taken in into something that you can actually use. In other words, it's time to activate the language. And you know, a lot of people skip this part because it feels a bit uncomfortable. Like me, the king of embarrassment in Japan. I still can't believe I wasted 2 whole years afraid to speak. But what I never mentioned is that I turned around this fear almost overnight when I decided to abandon study entirely. And I started doing nothing but speaking. That's right. I arranged to have daily conversations with a Japanese conversation exchange partner. So 1 hour daily conversations in Japanese, no English allowed. And I swear, within about 3 weeks, over the course of around 3, maybe 4 weeks, the fear that I had started dissipating completely. I stopped panicking when someone would answer my question or ask me something, and suddenly, with that fear gone, it opened the door to having actual conversations. So please trust me on this. Do not skip it just because you are shy. Actually speaking and arranging to speak is how you bridge the gap to becoming fluent. And it starts out beautifully simple. All we're going to do is coax the language out of hiding. So take that story that you listened to earlier and try to retell that story in your own words. Speak it out loud, because the whole idea is to get everything that went into your head to now come out of your mouth. Better yet, try to use the specific words that you wrote down earlier. Even if it comes out broken and strange, well, that's fine. That's exactly the point. Your brain is practicing retrieving that language, and that retrieval is what makes it stick. And remember to make it fun. If you hate talking to the mirror, I don't know, talk to your plants.
Ay, qué bonitas mis plantitas. Ay, mira qué secas están, pobrecitas.
Hey, it will make you remember stuff. And if you can bear it, record a quick video of yourself on your phone. You'll have some funny sentences coming out and pronunciation that makes you cringe. But who's gonna see it except you? Just don't post it to TikTok. Half the words missing? Welcome to my world. And if you actually do this, then you're already winning. But as you get further along, you graduate to the next step. And here's where things get a whole lot more interesting because now you have 2 extra jobs. First, no more talking to your plants, okay? You need a real human that you can talk to. Someone like a tutor, a language partner, a friend that you made online. If you don't have that person, you can find lovely speaking partners over at LanguageTalk. I will drop a link below. Either way, just show up with a topic you like and get talking. Go in with one goal only, to make good, specific, memorable mistakes. Make mistakes. The more mistakes you make, the more progress you will be making. That's the way it works. Your second job, use voice notes for practice. All I want you to do is record a short audio message and send it to a native speaker, the same person you've been chatting with, maybe a friend from school, I don't know. Are you going to delete the first 17 takes of that message? Yeah, probably, but so what? Each time you re-record the message, and I do this, I send messages and I realize I've screwed up and I delete it and I re-record it. Each time you do that, it'll be a little better. And that's you activating your new language. Bravo. And once holding a conversation isn't the scary bit anymore, once you're ready to make it harder on purpose, well now you've made it to beast mode. And by now you want to be speaking as much as you possibly can. And here's how to make every session count. Make it your mission to find different native speakers, not just your regular one. Find a different accent, faster talker, or someone older. That variety is the closest thing to actually living in the country, and it will stretch you in really great ways. Hey, remember those surprises you discovered in phase 2? Show up to your chat and test them out. Try saying something sarcastic you heard on a podcast. Make a joke. Use an idiom like bite the bullet and watch their reaction. I mean, if it doesn't quite land, then great. Now they can help you get it right. It's all about creating the opportunity for improvement. I probably could have suggested this earlier, but start keeping a daily journal in the language too. The thing is, when you write about your day in your own words, it forces you to use your passive vocabulary. That's words that you know, but wouldn't necessarily reach for in a conversation. And be as expressive as you can. Try poetry, whatever. The main thing to do is to write something every day, because this is the activate phase, remember? So, are you ready to lock this in? Start at the step that fits where you are right now and commit to the system. First, you immerse, get the language into your ears. Then you learn, go back and notice what's actually happening. And finally, you activate. You start using it out loud, mistakes and all. And that's the whole loop. Hear it, understand it, use it, and repeat. And to make it completely foolproof, remember to download your free guide. Pick your path and start letting your brain do what it does best. There's just one thing left to figure out. How do you actually find the right things to listen to? Because if you get that part wrong, the whole system falls apart. And that's exactly what I'll show you how to do in this next video. There are only 4 types of podcasts that you should ever listen to if you're learning a language. You don't want to miss this one.